Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. I'm your co-host, Julia.
And I'm Barry the Film Critic. Hello, everyone.
And tonight, Barry surprised me with a wonderful, just meaningful film experience. Just kidding.
I'm like, oh, wow, you really like The Temp. This is Tom Holland's The Temp.
May I help you?
I work here. This is my office.
Oh, Mr. Derns. I'm Chris Bolin.
Oh, yeah. The Temp. Hello. Hey, didn't you tell me you once fooled around with your secretary? I have a temp.
Who the hell's that?
Quite a temp. You want to call your husband, tell him you're working late?
No.
Chris, I don't get involved with my assistants.
Maybe someday I won't be your assistant.
Someone is leaking marketing strategy to our competitors.
Chris, you can get off now. Ron, how are you?
She's got a hidden agenda, Raj. Don't we all?
Do you think Roger was murdered?
In case you haven't noticed, we're running out of executives around here.
What are you doing?
Come on, you have doubts about her, too.
So it's still me.
Tell me it isn't.
Is there a problem with your temporary?
No, just want to know a little bit about her.
The man tries to get ahead in business and he's ambitious. A woman tries to and she's a slut.
She wants to be my boss.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure about anything.
Peter, can you believe it? They made me a marketing manager.
I got a temp telling me what to do?
Don't you find that you respond to someone who cares desperately about something? Anything?
I'm not selling secret, Charlotte.
Well, what are you doing, Peter? What's going on? You have been acting like an insane...
Someone in this company is trying to destroy me.
For Peter Derns,
Morning.
it's time to wake up
Stop doing this to me!
and smell the coffee. The Temp.
You have a very active imagination, Peter. I see where it gets you in a lot of trouble.
This is a director who, such a genre fan, because I think he was probably most famous for, he wrote Psycho 2, which is a very big deal. That's a great screenplay. And from there, he went on to direct movies like Child's Play and the original Child's Play, and also Fright Night. That's probably his most famous. And around the time that he did The Temp, his career kind of took a downward slope. He did two horror films for Paramount Pictures. One was The Temp, and the other one was Stephen King's Thinner. I like both of these movies, especially The Temp, but these movies were famous for having, they were meddled with after test screenings demanded reshoots. Both of those films, his latter two films, suffered from that. And as we discussed, we were noticing things while we were watching this movie. There's the film that they made, there's the stuff that they added, and man, some of this stuff really stands out. This is a very uneven film.
Okay, so wait, you like this movie?
Oh, I've always liked The Temp. I remember vividly when I was in college, Sunday afternoons, I would go down to the laundromat and I'd, get a big batch of laundry, and in the living room I'd turn on the TV, and, my dorm room had basic cable. So, I'm like, oh man, TNT, TBS, USA, The Temp was on a lot. So I remember watching this movie a lot when I was in college, but I liked it the first time I saw it. I saw it on video cassette. I'm a fan of this movie. I am. I dig it so much. I'm not saying it's a good film.
Well, it's not a good film, but it was entertaining.
It's very entertaining. I'll talk about the last time I watched it, which is a pretty significant part of the story too. But yeah, let's get into The Temp. So this is Timothy Hutton,
who I love.
Yeah. Thankfully, it was an easy sell for you because I don't think I've shown you this movie before. Oddly enough,
No,
yeah.
But you didn't even tell me Timothy Hutton was in it.
Yeah, the title comes up and you're like, ooh, Timothy Hutton. I'm like, oh, okay, I got her. She's in.
I'm easy. Okay, so he plays the main character,
Peter Derns.
Peter Derns, and he's an executive or kind of a lower level executive?
Lower level executive at Mrs. Appleby's Cookie Factory.
Yes. So it's a cookie company in New York City.
Yeah.
And, okay, his personal life is a shambles.
when we
I
meet
would
him,
like to say.
he's seeing a psychiatrist who is always. We never see the psychiatrist. We hear the shrink, and the shrink is telling him how you need to get
No,
control
we
of this.
we see him.
Do we actually see the shrink?
Yeah,
I
in
don't
the
know.
opening scene.
I thought it was always the camera was always on him.
Oh man,
I don't think we ever see the shrink. I'm seriously.
Hmm.
I think we always hear the shrink. They probably just like we don't need to cast this. We'll just have somebody do this
Yeah.
voiceover later on. But yeah, the shrink is telling him you need to get in control of this Mr. Hyde side of you that is
Yeah.
ruining your marriage, your career.
And what we find out is that he has a problem with paranoid thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's what broke up his marriage. And that's why he's living in a rental and his wife is at their house. And so he's estranged from his wife and son. And he has a problem with like wild thoughts
Yeah.
ruining his life.
Yes.
Because then he just makes irrational decisions.
This is an interesting time for Timothy Hutton because, as most know, I mean, Hutton kind of came out of nowhere, and then he does Ordinary People, wins the Academy Award, and suddenly he is one of our most in-demand, just an actor on the rise who, even though he was in a lot of films that weren't successful, I mean, he was an acclaimed actor working constantly. He was one of those, I mean, it really is comparable to Jeff Bridges or Denzel Washington. When they started off, they were not box office draws, but people... it's like, I got to see the new Tim Hutton movie. I got to see the new Denzel Washington movie. So, I mean, he was steady for a while. And then this weird period happens where I think maybe he was like, I should be in some Hollywood, like mainstream type movies. He does this film, and he also does the Stephen King film, The Dark Half. I love this period of Hutton's career because it's like, on the one hand, what is he doing in these movies? But I love him in these movies. I love that Hutton made these crazy horror films and then went right back to like doing character work and... Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you call The Temp a horror film because I don't think I would call it that. I think I said, is this more of a thriller? And you're like, good question. Like, oh, I don't know. What?
Not even being ominous, like, good question. I don't really
Yeah,
know.
like, yeah, it's
What
such
is
a
this film?
weird, well, the tone is all over the place.
Yes.
So,
Well, we'll get into that. So, yeah, so it's the day-to-day of this cookie company, and it's a lot of high-powered, high stakes. I mean, you'd think that Patrick Bateman works here. I mean, think the stakes are so high at this company.
oh yeah, because he gets to work on the first day that we see him, and he has to make a marketing presentation, and then it's just kind of well, we need to talk to these guys about that, and who are these guys, and why didn't you tell me, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So everybody's trying to climb the corporate ladder, and they don't care who they step on.
Even before the film becomes whatever you want to call it, a thriller, a horror film, whatever this movie is, this is a world that I want to spend a season of episodic television in. This world where it's a cookie company. They've got giant framed pictures of cookies everywhere. They have to go to cookie testing sessions. This is insane. But the movie is, I mean, they're playing it so straight. It's like inside the Keebler factory. Like I love this stuff so much. It's so absurd. But at the same time, I was like, well, of course, I'm sure there was like some shakedown at Nabisco. I'm sure like things got rough at Famous Amos,
Yeah, what's Mrs. Fields really like?
Yeah, there's some darkness going on there. Like, I didn't have the chips, okay? We undersold the chips. You can't fire me for this. Like to think like what a cookie thriller could be. I've been calling, and I'll jump to the chase. I've been calling this movie a cookie noir for a long time. It started. I'll say quickly. The last time I taught,
He's so proud of this, you guys.
Oh, I'm so proud of this because this came from a class I was teaching. This was like 10 years ago at UCCS at University of Colorado Springs. I was teaching a class called Modern Film Noir, and it was every film noir from Chinatown on. By the way, Chinatown also with Faye Dunaway, who's in this, and I included the Temp on the syllabus because I thought it'd be fun to include something so ridiculous after weeks and weeks of, at this point, it was like Body Heat and Fatal Attraction and, and not only like modern film noirs, but also like some erotic thrillers. So, after weeks and weeks of, I mean, at this point we were talking about like Jade and LA Confidential, and here's this film. And I told my class, we've dealt with, modern noir, neo-noir, and here's cookie noir. This is a film noir set in a cookie factory. And it was great because
they're like, oh, break, finally.
A break from like some really erotic and disturbing and Freudian, thrillers. And here's this thing where, people are yelling about, stolen cookie recipes. I mean, it's completely bonkers.
Okay, so Peter goes to work, and after this meeting, he finds out, I need a report on my desk by noon tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he goes to his office, and his assistant,
Played by Peter Coffey, really nice character actor. He was also in Mulholland Drive.
he's like, my wife's in labor, and I gotta go right now. And he's like, what? What about my report?
It's great because I don't know. Like I like the reality of this scene because what else? What are you gonna do? You can't because Peter is as it's been said over in the movie later on. He's a nice guy, so he's not gonna like you're gonna stay with me. Your wife can wait. No, it's like you go.
But
Don't want you to go,
also,
but you gotta go.
but also, he doesn't know how to write a report.
Yeah, which it's like, what are you doing? Are you just testing cookies all day? And by the way, again, I want his job. I want to work at this company.
Yeah. He probably worked his way up to this position. There's no way he hasn't been writing reports this whole
what kind of
time.
reports do? It's like maybe double stuff instead of maybe triple stuff for the next marketing test. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket.
So he goes home and he basically falls asleep to Arsenio Hall.
So, in case you didn't know, this movie took place in 1993. Yeah, he's watching Arsenio Hall, and I love this transition. He wakes up, it's watching some crappy AM morning talk show, and he realizes, oh man, I'm so late.
Yeah, and I gotta get to work. And by the way, my report still not done.
Yeah.
So he gets to his office, and who's there?
And we get this great Sharon Stone-worthy intro of Laura Flynn Boyle's character, Chris Bolin, who is his temp with his since his current office assistant is gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's completely surprised that he even has a temp, which is, wow, kudos to the HR department for just being right on top of that.
This cookie company is on it.
Oh, yeah. HR was like, oh, your wife's going to labor? Oh, maybe I should get Peter a temp. Like, what? Great. That's very efficient of them. So he's freaking out and also checking her out. And then he says something like, well, I'm just going to, I don't know, tell the boss I have a doctor's appointment to get out of this report. And she's like, don't do that. Like, we can do this. And she just goes to town on a report that she knows nothing about.
It's a fun montage because it's the equivalent of an action movie, the way this movie suddenly perks to life. Suddenly, Laura Flynn Boyle's Chris Bolin is typing a mile a minute, seemingly,
About what?
Yeah, did he fill her in? Does she just know a lot about cookies? Like, what is she writing? And he's sending over, and I gotta say, this is a touch that does not hold up. It's not just because the movie is dated in sort of ways, but there's a moment where he looks down her skirt, and her shirt, excuse me, and she just kind of smiles like, no, movie,
no.
No.
I think she was like, ooh, I got him where I want him. That's what she's thinking. She's not happy about it. She's calculating the entire time.
Then she's okay, because this of course is a thriller.
So even then,
okay, so we get some foreshadowing.
Yes, the way that she's dressing is obviously she's got a plan. She's not like, oh, my cute boss likes me. No. I think this whole time she's been planning this plan that we see unfold.
Okay, so I stand corrected. The scene works. Go Timothy Hutton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this whole report scene is crazy.
It's so, because there's as another bit of business I love. Not only do we have a scene with a water cooler, which is something you never see in an office anymore, but the line to get to the
the printer, copy machine.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a line 10 people deep, and she's like, "Out of my way! This is an emergency!" And then she's like, "What's your copy code?" And he's like, "And then she gets it out of the guy standing behind her. He's like, "I'm not supposed to tell my copier code." She's like, "What is it?"
It's great.
Yeah.
No,
this is hardcore office stuff.
Tearing into this cookie company. Yeah.
Yep. So thanks to her, he gets his report in on time.
We should mention this moment because it's pretty bananas. Because it's great because Oliver Platt, who's perfect in this, he's perfect in everything. He's playing the slimy colleague / enemy of Timothy Hutton's character. He's kind of like, so you're going to make that report, kind of mocking him. The elevator door opens, and Laura Flynn Boyle already has this great femme fatale look on her face. She hands him.
I mean, it's like bound, you know.
Oh, it's magnificent. I mean, I worked at Office Max. I've never made anything look this good. Yeah. Not to mention within minutes. So she hands it to Timothy Hutton. He takes the report, slides it across the floor like it's, I don't know, like what, a revolver? I mean, the thing just like, it's like a Frisbee. It flies.
Well, it like, yeah, it goes along this floor and into the boss's office under her secretary's desk.
Yeah.
The secretary picks it up, hands it to the boss like, oh, here's the other report that you wanted.
It's so, I mean, it's such a choreographed scene. It's
yeah.
Like, this is, you know, I don't know. It's ridiculous, but I'm like, I'm digging this because look what this movie is doing for our entertainment value. This is a nothing moment, a file being handed to somebody, but no, it becomes like a Spielbergian slapstick action sequence. Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yeah. So
Chris saves the day.
Chris saves the day, and Chris keeps saving the day for a little while. She's getting him organized. She's redoing his expense reports. I mean...
Yeah, and it's established really quickly that she's wicked smart and intelligent. That's probably, I really like, I mean, I like all the performances in this movie, I do, but I really like Laura Flynn Boyle's character because she's intelligent. There's a great moment watching it too, I'm thinking, where she tells her boss, or rather Peter, that she thinks it would be really smart to have a heart be put on the cookie jar because it establishes how healthy the cookies are. Thinking, man, are you ahead of your time? I mean, now, I won't even buy a cookie that doesn't have like the G gluten-free on it. I mean, like, man, she's like decades ahead of her time with this. There's like, put a heart and let them know that it's healthy. Like, yes, there's like a whole line of quote unquote healthy cookies that I see all the time.
Yeah, that was was a great, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is brilliant. But anyway, so
it is. Oh yes, it is. Okay, but she's also trying to get into Peter's pants. Now,
yeah, that's interesting.
Does she really want him to do that? Is she, because she's telling him, you know, oh, you're the first nice boss I've had. Everybody just tries to, you know, have sex with me, basically. Yeah. And he never does throughout the course of this film. Yeah. He's, you know, trying to work things out with his wife.
His wife, more attorney, and a child who is spoken about a lot, only has one scene, but yeah.
Oh yeah. He's trying to get his family back. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but they have all these like late night work sessions. Yeah. And nothing ever happens, but she's working it.
She's constantly coming on to him. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing ever comes of that. It's interesting because well, there's a lot of moments where I think like this movie wants to have like a Basic Instinct sort of feel to it, and I mean it's not just these moments. Like this movie, just to be critical of it for a second, the movie isn't sexy or scary enough, and it's weird that this is an R because
this movie is rated R.
Yeah, other than a few moments that we'll talk about, I mean this is a really soft R, really soft. I mean. I almost think like because the moments in question are sexual in nature and there's a bit of gore. I guess today
like barely.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I look at this, like this might be PG-13 today, but yeah.
Okay, so I think it's the next day, and she goes. It's like Secretary's Day or something. Secretary Appreciation Day, and so there's a lunch for all the assistants. And all right, a little bit about me. I have been an assistant a lot in my career. I am currently not one. So
I've been a temp many times in my career, but never like Laura Flynn Boyle, for the record.
And Faye Dunaway has this speech where she's talking about how she, I think, was an assistant before, like a long time ago. And she's like, and I asked my boss, you know, what do you want from me? And he says, read my mind. And that's what you all do for us. Without you, this place could not even run. And I'm thinking, lady, then that means all these people deserve raises and not this crappy lunch that you're giving them. This is ridiculous. This is the thing that I hate about these like secretary jobs is you get all the grunt work. You're supposed to read your boss's mind, figure out all of his stuff, and you get I mean, what do you get in return?
So this scene really struck a nerve for you.
It did. The whole reading your mind thing, I think it triggered me. Yeah.
Wow.
It really did.
That's interesting. Faye Dunaway, her performance in this film is cited as one of her worst. And, obviously it's not people have said that it might be like a parody of her performance in Network. Others have said that she's clearly doing a parody of Sherry Lansing, who at the time was running Paramount Pictures. Either way.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Mrs. Fields.
No. No, I think she's delicious in this movie. I love her line reading. She gives everything such a panache that it doesn't even deserve.
Yeah.
I love what she does in this.
There's really not enough of her in this film.
Agreed.
Because she's kind of I mean, a little bit ways through, I was like, wait, is she the president? Because she's really not around very much.
Yeah.
She just kind of comes in and is like, I'm not going to take the fall for this. You fix it. I need more reports.
Yeah, whenever the movie needs a lightening up, you just add a little Dunaway and man, the movie just
and
crackles to life.
then everyone like little roaches like scurries away and does their work, you know? So,
Yes.
yes.
So,
Oh, but that scene, okay, at the lunch.
yeah, a bit of lazy foreshadowing.
Yeah, at the lunch, Oliver Platt, I don't know what, a wasp
I couldn't
looms?
tell if it was a wasp or a hornet. I don't know my insects as well as I used to. But yeah,
okay.
it's a sinister looking insect, and of course Oliver Platt is terrified of it. The music lets us
Well,
know
he's
it's a threat.
allergic.
Yeah, because he's allergic.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's such an overplayed moment. It's like, okay, we get it.
It
movie.
really
We
is.
get it.
Because Chris, like, just slaps that thing with her bare hand.
Bare hand.
And then picks up some ice because apparently she got stung doing that. And Faye Dunaway just looks at her like, well done.
You clearly listened to my speech.
Yeah, like you're willing to do anything. And I mean anything.
There's a weird bit of business too, because it's also established that Timothy Hutton's best friend, played by Steven Weber, and this was an interesting part of Weber's career too, because best known for being on Wings. Did you ever watch Wings?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked Wings.
Yeah, and he was very good in that. He's very charming in that. But Weber at this point was trying to break out as a dramatic actor. He has a big role in Single White Female, a very scandalous scene in that movie, in fact, the year before this. And not long after this, he played Jack Torrance in the remake of The Shining, the one that was shot at Estes Park, Colorado. So it's interesting to see him in this because obviously, he's known primarily for comedy because of TV. And in this, he's quite sinister. I like his performance in this as Hutton's best friend. And he's constantly telling Hutton, best friend, but also...
Is he the president of a rival cookie company?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if president is the word, but I mean, he's basically calling the shots over there.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's two cookie companies.
Two rival cookie companies, and these two friends
and
are
they're best friends.
best friends. But he's like, hey, man, if it comes between you and me, like, you're going down, man.
Yeah, he's like, I don't take prisoners or something. He's like, he's like, but let's not, ruin our friendship. But just so you know, I'm going to be ruthless.
It's really cool to know that the future of these two rival cookie companies is between a really nice, soft executive and this uber, ultra alpha male.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It's very peculiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. But during this discussion, because basically the question comes up, hey, should I make a move on my temp? Timothy Hutton is asking Steven Weber that, and Weber says, no, go for it. And at the end of the discussion, Timothy Hutton actually looks at the camera and says, what me worry? That's the slogan of Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine, which I think is the first indication that this film is not really taking itself too seriously, at least not at this point.
Yeah, no, I don't think it takes itself seriously at all.
So Chris suggests the heart on the cookie jar, and it winds up being an idea that she claims came from Peter.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So she really is the best temp ever.
Best temp ever.
Yes. And so you have the development of let's see, Laura Flynn Boyle. At one point, she throws out the line, "This isn't about sex, Peter. It's about work." She's her performance is really sharp, and the character is interesting because it does seem like she's just super motivated and she wants to make an impression. She wants to stand out. So far, so good. I mean, the movie is really just about the inner workings of this cookie company.
Yeah, and she has a picture on her desk of her husband and her child, so it's established she's married, and then she sees Peter's son on his desk but not his wife, so she's like, oh, that must be really hard to be separated for him. And he's like, oh, you gathered all that just from looking at my stuff, eh? So she's very perceptive.
Yes. The first act of this film, as occasionally over the top as it is, it's solid. And then you can really feel the moment the movie starts to take a dive.
Okay, is that when...
It's the line.
Which line?
Her line. Laura Flynn Boyle exits a scene with this line. She says, Peter, cookie eater, had a temp and couldn't keep her. Oh, yeah. Here's my theory on this. I think that was originally the poster, the movie poster tagline, and I think the director said, that's really silly. How about we just have her say it, and, if the test audience doesn't laugh, we'll keep it in the movie. I think that's why it's there. Because, really, doesn't it sound like the tagline for the movie? It's so on the nose.
It's so silly.
Yeah, God bless Laura Flynn Boyle for keeping a straight face with that line. It's so absurd. And from there on, the movie is constantly, this is where it gets really wobbly.
Okay, so this is where I wasn't sure how long his assistant was gone for, because I was watching Chris's hair, and it looks like she's got a wig, she's got short hair, she's got long hair. We don't really know. So I'm assuming his assistant is only gone for, 2 weeks?
Right.
And she just has all sorts of crazy looks.
You'd expect a little tagline saying 4 months later. Because the length of Laura Flynn Boyle's hair is all over the place.
Well, the way that it goes from super short to long, I'm like, has she been there for years?
Yeah, I was defending it. You heard me. I was going maybe she just put her hair down. She has a lot of hair. But in the next scene, she's got short hair again. No, this is an editing problem.
Yeah, I think they gave her a wig at some point.
Yeah.
So Peter,
did she put on a wig and then forget to take off the prior wig? It's so much hair at one point. You're absolutely right.
It's so crazy.
Because initially she has this really cute tight hair, but after a while, it's like Tina Turner hair. It's it's all over the place. Yeah.
So then, so Peter's assistant comes back from paternity leave, and that's when she says that silly line, and she goes and apparently is going to work for his friend in a different office, right? Yeah. And so this is when I was like, oh my gosh, this was the part that the movie took a turn for me.
Okay.
Was when his new assistant, or his new guy, same guy, original guy, is back, and he's like, oh, what's happened? I can't find anything. Yeah. And then she's like, well, I cleaned up and I put things in the filing cabinet. You should try it sometime. Okay, so he's back at work working for Peter, and he goes to the paper shredder and it's jammed. And
something's up because the camera is inside the paper shredder looking at him. You're going, shredder vision.
Yeah, so then he goes, you don't really know what he's doing, but he goes to the wall and there's 15 plugs plugged in. And he's just like, this one, come on. What an idiot.
Yeah.
So he thinks he's unplugged the paper shredder, and he's jamming it, and his hand just gets mangled. Blood squirts up. It is terrible.
It's a shock of gore, and it couldn't feel more out of place in a film that prior to this moment never indicates that anything like this is coming.
Yeah. It's very strange.
Yeah.
And so then, surprise, surprise, Chris is back because his assistant can't. I don't know if he has
a one-handed assistant.
I don't know if he has a hand anymore.
They don't
even. He's out of the movie now.
Yeah,
he's gone. Never.
They might have had some scene where he's in the hospital bed. He's got a stump and he's waving at Chris with his stump, and I'm sure they're like, this movie needs to be tighter. Let's lose the.
Yeah,
dude.
We're not gonna have stump guy in here. So
yeah,
she comes back,
and then there's the bit. This is, not to get too ahead of it, but although, I guess we should probably comment on this at some point. You and I are aware of, and this is something I was aware of, and we became very aware of it after the film. We kind of looked into it. This is a movie that was allegedly filmed as a black comedy and became a thriller after the studio changed hands, and suddenly a different vision for the film emerged, and the powers that be at Paramount Pictures, including Sherry Lansing, said, we need to make this a different film than what we have, and there was a bunch of reshoots. You can not only tell the reshoots there because of the length of Laura Flynn Boyle's hair, but also in the tone constantly changing. And there's a scene on a cookie floor, on the floor of, like they're testing the cookies and they're having conversation about the cookies. Gives an indication of what this film could have been because Dwight Schultz is playing one of the executives. Dwight Schultz played Madman Murdoch, excuse me, in the A-Team back in the day, and he's really playing the intense angle. Like at one point, he's screaming at Timothy Hutton. Timothy Hutton goes, "Lighten up, man! We're in the cookie business." And later on, after Chris gets promotion, he's like, "The molasses, man! That molasses was a killer!" Like they're really. Really playing up again the cookie noir of this movie, and I'm like, yes, this whole film should be like this. Play it completely straight, make it so absurd that we're talking about a factory that makes high fructose corn syrup and starch and flour and but the film it inches towards that and it wavers away from it. It wants to be an erotic thriller and it's not. It wants to be an intense corporate thriller. It's not. And it wants to be a horror film in some ways, and it isn't.
It's none of those things. It's
none of those things.
It's absurd. But that scene in question is when Chris says, "You know what? These cookies need molasses, and that's what my grandmother used." And they're like, "We can't afford molasses." And she's like, "I already looked into it. Here's the research, And so she's really doing her cookie research.
And doesn't this come about because of a bad batch that ends up at a cookie testing at a
Oh, that's after this.
That's after this. Okay, I couldn't remember the order. Yeah, so this is another scene that clearly came into being because of the reshoots, the demand for this movie to be more violent or gory or sensational, whatever. It's a crazy, insane bug nut scene. It's one of those things where you go into the supermarket and it's whatever in the produce section or whatever it is, and there's just like a little sample lady promoting a product.
Like when you go to Costco.
Yeah, go to Costco, or like even as a kid, like I'd go to whatever local store and they'd be giving away like new like double fudge Oreos. Like, oh, I'd love some. And so it's a Mrs. Appleby standee. And the lady is handing Mrs. Appleby's cookies to the customers. They went, "It's so good." And we get a tight close up of this lady. She's biting into it, and suddenly a trickle of blood comes out of her mouth. And this young teenager is coughing, and suddenly she just spews a huge chunk of cookie and blood all over.
Oh my gosh, lady. It's insane.
And the standing lady goes, and then they just randomly cut to another scene. I'm like, wow, movie.
Well, not only that. They have a brief, then, you have Faye Dunaway, doing the walk, she's walking down the hall, like yelling at everybody, like, you need to do this and you need to do that and we need to fix this and, make sure that whatever.
Let me give you my favorite because I wrote this down. Like, Dunaway, this is why you are a goddess. Okay. She has a line where she goes, "New York is going to look for sacrificial lambs, and I promise you, it won't be me." Love it.
So that happens, and then this is how you know this movie is crazy. It cuts to the whole company at like a team building barbecue where they're playing tug of rope and they're eating hot dogs and there's a lake.
Right.
And Peter's just like out in a little inner tube, just like, I don't have a care in the world. It's fine that our cookies are killing people.
Well, even before that, it's great because they're doing a big tug of war match and they make Laura Flynn Boyle dress as alluring as possible. And of course, she beats Peter at the tug of war. It's a big point I made of that. And then they're in line getting like some hot dogs. This is again might be the indication of where this film used to be a comedy. I love this. Lynn Shays, the secretary, is going, "Oh, the rival company, they get like better food, and we're getting like hot dogs." And Timothy Hutton says, "Well, we sell oatmeal and shrapnel cookies. What do you expect?" I love that line so much. I was howling like, yes, this is probably what this movie was at some point.
Oatmeal and shrapnel cookies.
Great title, by the way.
Yeah. And do we ever find out how those cookies?
There's no follow-up with that. There is a scene where like a guy who looks like Chef Boyardee answers the phone and he's like, "Hey Peter, no worries, buddy. I look like nothing wrong with the cookies." It
wasn't, our bakery,
Yeah.
But what? There was like glass inside?
Glass, who knows?
We don't even know.
Yeah.
It's just like this throwaway thing like, oh, okay, no lawsuits, like it's fine.
I can imagine like a really dark, intense film dealing with this sequence all by itself. Like remember that movie we saw with Mark Ruffalo called Dark Waters? Like a whole movie about like what's in the cookies.
Yeah.
This movie's just like, next scene.
Yeah, this movie's like, we're not going to deal with that. We have a sexy temp who's trying to sabotage things.
That's right. I got to get
Let's
back
go
to that.
back to her.
So back to the sexy temp scene, and we get Timothy Hutton shirtless, shorts, and he's like just sitting in an inner tube, floating around with a beer. I mean, it looks like a Budweiser ad. And who swims up to him, of course, is Laura Flynn Boyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to talk about that scene?
No, I feel uncomfortable talking about that scene.
Me too.
All right, let's just move on. So
you have to watch the movie if you want to know.
The inner tube scene. No, like the movie, like again, it's one of these things. The movie wants to be a few things, and yeah, I don't want to get ahead of that, but yeah, this is definitely, you get the sense like, okay, maybe they're thinking because Basic Instinct and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle came out the year before, they're like, we gotta tap into that formula because those movies were monster hits. So
yeah, those movies were good.
They're good, but they're also like, they're pretty, I mean, especially Basic Instinct. I mean, those are extreme films. I mean, again, like the movie barely earns its R. If anything, this movie is fighting for its R rating and it's kind of losing that battle. I mean, we have a guy who dies of a bee sting. I think we jumped over that.
Oh, yeah, no, he hasn't. Has he died yet? I don't know. But yeah, it's crazy. You know, Peter's driving to work and there's a traffic jam and oh my gosh, his friend or colleague, they're not really friends, kind of work rivals. Yeah. He's just like dead in his car and a hornet crawls out of his mouth.
Yeah, so Oliver Platt exits the movie. But you know, if this movie was smart, they would have got rid of Dwight Schultz and kept Oliver Platt. Any movie is always better with Oliver Platt in it.
Yeah, but it's a very like arachnophobia type scene.
Oh, yeah. It's like it could be something out of like The Swarm or some bee movie.
It's pretty gross.
Yeah.
So he's gone. And this whole time I'm thinking, is this Chris's doing? Like, how is she doing all of this?
And one of the wonderful things is that you cut to a scene where Faye Dunaway is having lunch, a power lunch, of course, with Timothy Hutton. She says, "In case you haven't noticed, we're running out of executives around here."
Yes. I'm thinking if I was working at this company trying to climb the corporate ladder, I would be second guessing this decision because these people are dying left and right.
And we see that there's a newspaper clipping where they address the thing that happened in the supermarket. I'm like, what about all the people who are dying in the company? Like I don't know. I think they're kind of missing the clouds for the trees. Mm-hmm. That's not how that expression goes. They're missing
the forest through the trees.
They're missing the crumbs for the cookies.
Okay.
So yeah. At one point, again, I'm kind of jumping ahead. It's established. What is it? What is the thing that?
Well, we don't have to go scene by scene with this ridiculous.
Yeah, scene by scene. I'm trying to remember, like, what's the incident that happens? And I know this movie really well. Why can't I think of it? What's the incident that gets Chris in trouble with him? Oh, I know. It's the whole thing of
she uses his account to buy something that he didn't give her permission to buy.
Right, and suddenly he has agency to fire her. He's about to fire her when he realizes, as she tells him, "You're gonna be down the hallway from me." And I've got this promotion, and the camera does this great pan around him. We see like the horror on Timothy Hutton's face contrasted with her,
because she gets to go to the 7th floor.
Mm-hmm. And she has a throwaway line. I did want to address this earlier. She has a throwaway line where she says that she's having an affair with Faye Dunaway's character.
Oh yeah,
and nothing else comes of this. And I thought, is this one of those reshot moments? Because they're like, we saw Basic Instinct. It's established that Catherine Trammell, Sharon Stone's character, is bisexual. She's having affairs with older women. We need to like tap into that because it's one line where she references. We don't know if it's jokingly or if it's truthful.
Because Peter's like, "Are you sleeping with I don't know
her
new boss?"
She's like, "No, I'm sleeping with Charlene."
Yeah, and you're just like, wait, what?
And again, if the movie had done something with that, anything that would have merited that, but it is just, again, it's another total loose end. And if you're going to put something that loaded in there, do something with it.
Okay, and I did she also eavesdropped on a phone call with Peter and his therapist. And so she...
Terrible therapist, by the way. It's like, hey, so is Mr. Hyde coming out to play? Like, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
No bedside manner.
So crazy. So she knows that he struggles with paranoia and everything. And at one point she's like, Peter, you're so paranoid. And he's like, don't say that to me. And he freaks out. So she's definitely messing with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, do you think at some point the shrink was like, you know what, maybe you shouldn't work at this cookie company, because you'd think a cookie company would be fun, but Peter, like,
well, and
this
maybe
is a really stressful job.
And maybe his therapist should call his paranoia, Mr. Hyde, when it's not like he has multiple personalities.
Do you think that maybe Peter Shrink is gaslighting him? That maybe perhaps he was trying to just keep him as a client because no one else will see him?
He's like, no, Peter, you aren't just paranoid. You have another personality. That's a pretty big thing
You're
to
like
say.
A character in a Robert Louis Stevenson novel. It's like, I got no other clients, but this guy who works at a cookie company, oh my gosh, man, this guy is like, I can go to Maui now because of this guy. I love this guy.
He's ruined his entire marriage. Oh, this is how he ruins his marriage, though, right? He thinks that his wife is cheating on him with her boss.
Yeah.
And so he's telling Chris that he hears her in another room with her boss and his wife. And she's like, oh, menage a trois kind of a thing. No, so he bursts in the room and it's a dining room and they're having dinner and like the kids are there. And that's the whole thing that I'm like, okay, first of all, he wouldn't know that it's a dining room and not a bedroom. Like, that's ridiculous. Anybody who knows like basic layouts of houses would know this.
And if they're doing a menage a trois, I mean, you'd know there'd be like a sock on the door. There'd be like some Yanni playing. I mean, it wouldn't be like the same door that's like connected to the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's so silly. He's like, I wonder what's next to this living room. I mean, come on.
It's a peculiar scene, and it's not even a scene. I mean, it's a monologue that Timothy Hutton has, and he's telling Laura Flynn Boyle this at a bar after work, and it's one of the many scenes where she's basically coming on to him emotionally, trying to establish this emotional affair, which never really takes hold.
Right. Yeah.
He's a nice guy, despite his Mr. Hyde complex.
Yeah, he's a nice, paranoid guy.
Yes, very, very paranoid. So speaking of which, I got to say, like, there's a line in the third act of the film, and it's delivered by one of the least interesting characters. It's really not even worth mentioning in terms of the story, but there is a line where someone says to Timothy Hutton's character, you got your hands caught in the cookie jar. I wonder, was this how, I mean, did the screenwriter say, I'm writing this cookie thriller, okay? And you're not going to believe what line I managed to get into the screenplay. But that said, nobody in this movie ever says that's how the cookie crumbles. Missed opportunity.
Ooh, total missed opportunity.
I mean, you have to, right?
Yes. I mean, they say so many other ridiculous things that why not that?
Not to mention they're yelling things that are just like, we got to get those chunky, chewy, yummy, gooey cookies ready by February. You're dropping the ball, man. We got to get those cookies beta tested.
No, what is their big cookie called?
Oatmeal Raisin Classic.
Yes.
Which, by the way, movie, I mean,
boring.
These cookies are depressing. I kept waiting for a scene where like Chris goes, well, how about, hear me out here, chocolate chips. We put chocolate chips in these cookies and people will actually buy them.
I know. I'm like, oatmeal raisin?
Like,
that's so lame.
I've been talking about like the secret ingredient here being the lack of molasses. These are like the Werther's originals of cookies. They really are.
And when they did that horror tasting where it's like they were tiny little hearts or something. Like the cookies were in the shape of hearts.
Respectfully, because I love and miss my grandparents, but this is the kind of cookie your grandparents give and you go, oh, thanks, Grandma.
Oh, you're like, oh, chocolate. Oh, it's a raisin. Never mind.
You take a bite out of it. It's like taking a bite out of like a hardened loaf of bread. It's just, yeah.
They didn't even look good. They look like a cookie that I would just make at home, just...
Your cookies are amazing, Jules. Yeah.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is it's not like there was anything special about them. And the cookies that at the taste testing were not the same cookies at the store. They were completely different. Maybe it was the secret molasses ingredient and the shrapnel.
Shrapnel that made them good. And I love it. At one point, I mean, it's again like this movie. At times, it doesn't. I mean, it just doesn't take advantage of how absurd it is. There's a scene where Faye Dunaway shows up in Timothy Hutton's office, and it's great. Timothy Hutton's walking to his office, and everyone's giving him like the side eye. It's like, what's up? He goes to the office, and it turns out Faye Dunaway accuses him that he stole the chewy almond recipe on his server and sold the secrets to rival cookie companies. It's like, where's the chewy almond recipe, Peter? It's great.
Oh, yeah, because it is established that there's somebody selling secrets. And Faye Dunaway is like, we have a mole in this company. And I'm thinking, okay.
One of the Keebler elves has gone rogue.
Well, I'm like, who's the newest person? You didn't have this problem until Chris showed up. Like, think, people, think.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, she's so smart. Oh, she's so pretty. You know what?
Well, now you're really siding with Timothy Hutton's character because that's what he's going through. I mean, he nearly has a breakdown at his son's basketball game, which is hilarious because the scene is Maura Tierney and Timothy Hutton on a stand. No shots of the basketball game. It's just the two of them, and you hear like little squeaky shoes in the background.
They show one shot of his son like missing a basket. They're like,
poor kid.
Wow, okay. Yeah.
Kids, so your motivation is you suck at basketball and action.
Yeah. No, he does have a breakdown. But think about it. All these crazy things are happening, and he's already paranoid about life and whatever. And Chris is just cool as a cucumber. I don't know.
And meanwhile, Peter and Charlene, played by Faye Dunaway, are freaking out about the future of the feasibility and the monetary value of their oatmeal raisin classic line, which is coming out.
So she's like, Peter, you go home and I'll call you. I'll tell you when I'm ready. It's like she puts him in timeout. She's like his mom or something.
Yeah. So let's see.
I don't know. The next day he gets a promotion.
Oh, that's so ridiculous.
Okay, so the whole office sees him get accused of selling secrets, and he gets, yelled at by the president. He goes home. The next day she's like, well, it looks like it was just a big mistake, and you have Chris to thank for that. And by the way, you're now moving to the 7th floor. It's so insane.
It is, because the scene before that was the bar fight scene, right? Like Peter gets into a bar fight, which is a badly staged bar fight. And then the touch I like is this is what makes the film noir more than anything else. I mean, Peter, the unreliable protagonist who is losing his mind, he's drunk. He is in the back of the bar. It's raining hard. He's literally in the gutter. He's leading him to garbage. And his best friend is like, I don't even know who you are anymore, man. And he walks off. And the camera pulls back and we see Peter just like immersed in the murk and the wetness. Like this is film noir. This is great. It's surrounded by this cookie nonsense, but like this is clearly what the movie wants to be.
Right. And we didn't mention that he sees Chris and his best friend kind of,
hobnobbing at
at a club.
At a club where they sell water for $4 a bottle. I'm like, wow, in 1993?
Yes, $4
That's amazing.
Did they even have plastic water bottles in 1993?
Well, in this case, yeah, it would like today it would be biodegradable, but this is back then. Like we don't care. Like it's plastic. It's like 2 layers of plastic and Teflon. Teflon. It's $4 mineral water. Like what water is this?
So when they have the bar fight, he's like, "What were you doing with her, man?" And he's like, "I'm just trying to get in her pants."
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but I think she was working with him.
And it's around this time, a scene that we skipped over, because this is the scene that probably more than anything gave the movie all right, we'll give you an R. It's the scene where Peter goes to Laura Flynn Boyle's house.
This is the most random thing. I mean, he's trying to get information about her?
Yeah, because he just suspects that she and his best friend are having an affair. So he's sneaking around her place He hears moaning, looks through the window, and it's Laura Flynn Boyle in bed by herself. And, you know, there are ways to make this sort of scene erotic. This is not really the way.
Like you can't really. They don't show anything really.
Again, like this movie wants to be Basic Instinct, and it's really on the level of like a Lifetime TV movie.
Yes, totally.
And then a touch I love. This old man shows up like, "Hey, you little pervert!"
You're peeping Tom,
and he smacks him Hutton around, and Hutton bolts for it. And I'm wondering, like, is this Laura Flynn Boyle's dad, or is this just the neighborhood pervert who's just like, "Hey, you're on my territory. This is my window."
I don't know. It's very strange because I thought, is that her dad? Is that her husband? Like, who is this guy?
Or just the next door neighbor, like.
And she looks out the window.
6 o'clock, it's my time to shine.
Well, she looks out the window because he's like, I got rid of that peeping Tom for you. And she just has that look like, ooh, somebody.
Oh, it was Peter.
Somebody's looking at me? Ooh.
Well, now you're back on, Carl.
It's just so strange.
Yeah.
Okay, so Peter's been promoted to the 7th floor. He's now a vice president. And Faye Dunaway is like, you and Chris are going on some business trip together.
Yeah.
And so the next scene, they're driving in her convertible.
And by the way, Laura Flynn Boyle is looking like a film noir femme fatale. She's got the head wrap, she's got the black sunglasses, but she's wearing these very bright, often red, pink outfits. And again, it's like, okay, movie, I can see what you're trying to say, even though it's in this absurd context. But yes, so it's this action sequence. Again, another scene that just comes out of nowhere, where the brakes don't work in the car. They nearly crash.
Yeah, so he's on this 2-lane highway and, you know, finally he's like, pulls off onto the side and the car stops and he says, oh, you have brake fluid leaking. And she's like, somebody's trying to kill us? It's like, you are, Chris. You probably cut your own brake line.
But to be fair, the movie never tells us. There's no follow-up with this. We don't know.
Right. There's no follow-up, so that's just my assumption. But
Yeah.
I think that she's doing all of this.
What I assume is that the scene is in there because there is a scene in Basic Instinct where Michael Douglas is driving around a mountain and he nearly gets hit because he's tailing Catherine Trammell. So I think they're like, you know what? That scene really worked for Basic Instinct. We really need to have a scene like that in this movie. And it's nowhere near as exciting. Even though I got to say, I love the music to this film. Love it. But yeah, this is no Basic Instinct.
Yeah, and then they end up at a hotel, and I don't know.
More unsexy things. More unsuspenseful things.
Yeah,
happen.
nothing happens. Exciting. And then he takes a shower and gets a phone call from the front desk, and it's like, you have to get back to there's a cookie emergency.
Oh no, they did triple stuff instead of double fudge.
But he thinks Faye Dunaway has called. But I'm like, okay, Chris is in the room right next door to you, and you don't
check.
You don't
Yeah.
this is so suspicious.
I mean, it's suspicious as it feels like the screenwriter is making this scene happen for minus a proper motivation.
Exactly, because all of a sudden he just what car is he driving? How did she? Did she drive her car without brakes? Did he drive?
Did he get back
car?
into the brakeless car?
It makes no sense. Like, did somebody call a cab?
Is it like a throwaway line? Like, good thing I went and got these brakes fixed. You know, like nothing.
No, is there AAA out there?
Right.
I don't know. So he ends up.
Well, I'm just gonna go really fast. I don't need to stop. So this car doesn't have brakes.
It's a cookie emergency. I don't need brakes.
Cookie emergencies. Wait for no one. Yeah. So he shows up at the scene of the climax and is established bad things are going to happen because we have a slaughtered security guard who has the penknife established earlier in the film is stabbed.
It's a letter opener.
Excuse me, a letter opener into his abdomen. Mm-hmm. There's blood on the railway, and in an interesting homage to Psycho, because Hutton enters into an office. We don't see who it is, but he gets smacked on the head, and then the light is kind of swinging back and forth. It's just like the last scene of Psycho, except in this case, it's Faye Dunaway and Laura Flynn Boyle having a cat fight on a rafter.
Well, I mean, first it's Chris looking injured.
Right.
And then you see Faye Dunaway, she goes to hit Peter, and she does. And so it's strange because you're like, oh, is it Faye Dunaway who's like the mastermind behind all these crazy things? But then Faye Dunaway, dies, and but right before she falls to her death,
The pictures! Look at the pictures!
Yeah. The pictures! And then, so he gets put on a gurney in an ambulance, and Chris is like walking fine. So at that moment I was like, oh, did Chris like injure herself to make herself look like she couldn't get up? Because
so the movie, so the movie wraps it up. So it's like however many days, weeks, we don't know. Later, he's having a nice little happy walk with his wife and the son that we're finally gets a few lines in.
Okay, but yeah, so they're back together. And then Peter's made the interim president of the cookie company.
Everyone else is dead. This sinister cookie company.
And then we see his assistant, or Faye Dunaway's assistant, has these framed pictures, and it's Chris's husband and daughter, and he realizes, oh, she's like, oh yeah, that comes with the frame. Dun dun. She's not married. So,
although all things considered, this would be the least interesting thing that she lied about. Like,
exactly.
Of all the things to catch her for, like, oh, okay, you're just lying about your. Oh, okay.
You're actually single.
What about the murders? No, you ever murder anybody? That might be interesting. I mean, ask her about the murders. Don't ask her about the picture frame.
I know, it's so ridiculous.
Ever committed a homicide? Ever given a guy a bee? Ever put a bee in a guy's car? You ever strangled a guy in his office?
Have you ever tried to make a paper shredder mangle somebody?
What's going on with you and Faye Dunaway? Did anything actually happen there?
Yeah. Did you seduce her? What's going on?
Do you like to do things by yourself and leave your window open and have this weird pervy guy named Carl who lives next door to you who likes to watch? Because that's kind of weird. Not that I would know about that. Not that I was there watching with Carl.
Do you like to put shrapnel inside cookies? Like glass? Yeah. It's so crazy. So then she comes in and she's kind of like, congratulations, Peter.
She's got the power hair in this scene.
Yeah. And then he confronts her about the pictures. Like, you're not really married. And then
it's like all the things to accuse her for.
I know. So then he calls the, security guard, and then the last line of the movie is, "You're fired."
Yeah. Quick fade to black. And again, I remember showing this movie to my film students, and a lot of them in that moment, they were laughing hysterically, and some of them were high-fiving each other, and even I was applauding. I mean, it was great. Because it's ridiculous. Because it's supposed to be this moment of we're going yeah, but no, it's silly.
It is silly.
It's painfully silly.
Okay, so what was the alternative ending?
Oh boy.
Because I was like, ooh, you usually come up with an alternative ending, but I thought this, unless you have another option too.
Well, let's go over this. So yeah, this is a real whammy because I've always wondered what the alternate ending is. By the way, in the prior episode, I was mocking Wikipedia, and here I am reading from the Wikipedia.
Yeah,
How embarrassing.
Yeah,
How
thank
embarrassing.
you.
It just means I'm a big giant hypocrite.
You mocked me.
Yes, I was mocking you, and here I am reading Wikipedia. So the film's original ending, as filmed by the director Tom Holland, had Peter fighting for his life against Chris inside the bakery factory. The tussle results in Peter being thrown into cookie dough before falling onto a large conveyor belt. In the struggle, Chris's hand is chopped off by a piece of machinery before the conveyor belt slides her into an oven, incinerating her. And this conclusion was proved to be, surprise, too gruesome for test audiences. Oh my gosh. I want to start a GoFundMe right now. I want to raise $1 million, and I want to raise $1 million and ask Laura Flynn Boyle and Timothy Hutton, can you just restage the original ending of the Temp for us? Because I have to see.
Why do we need $1 million? Wasn't it already shot? It's somewhere in some studio.
You think so? I don't know if it would have survived. I hope so.
Oh,
I
because
mean,
it's
but
on film.
I would be
yeah.
willing to like go through the Paramount, lot and like, go through just their archives searching for the insane original ending of The Temp, because that is bucknuts wild.
Sounds.
A fight in cookie dough and she loses her hand, like, oh,
And she gets
man.
incinerated.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's like the witch at the end of a grim fairy tale.
Yeah, Hansel and Gretel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
I would take it further though. My ending would
Okay.
be that, and then a week later, and Peter's the president of Mrs. Appleby's, and he's on the phone with he's like, no, don't worry. Like, I know what happened, with the shrapnel cookies, as we laughingly call them, but don't worry, sir, that's not going to happen again. I promise you, this batch of cookies that we're sending you is sublime. And then they cut to the store, and the cookies are being delivered. And we see that one of the cookies has a little teeny tiny tuft of red hair sticking out of it.
So all the cookies have
It's Chris cookies.
Chris cookies.
Yeah. Because, I mean, just go there, go even further.
My gosh.
Yeah, why not?
It's not Soylent Green.
No, it's worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Mrs. Appleby's. A treasure in every bite.
Oh, my gosh. Disgusting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but again, like, that's an indication of how far this movie did not go. I feel like this movie wants to be rougher, and it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the reshoots and these moments of gore that come out of nowhere, like you mentioned, the paper shredder, then of course the bee death. There's so many violent moments in this movie that it feels. I mean, because they're so widely spaced apart, you can't call this a slasher film.
No. They just kind of come out of nowhere, and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa.
And then they go away, and you're back to scenes of boardrooms about how there needs to be more molasses in the cookies.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know what
I would have
say.
loved a subplot where it turns out that Mrs. Appleby herself is the killer.
Oh, well, we don't ever get to meet Mrs. Appleby.
I know, they should have had that. Or the lady who is the lady who's the model for Mrs. Appleby. Turns out, like, she really believes that she is Mrs. Appleby, and she has to stop everyone in the company from ruining her cookies.
Ooh, she's the Jekyll and Hyde.
She is.
Hmm.
And she's going like, no, I'm not going to let Chris, this temp, like, put chocolate chips in my oatmeal raisin classic. No, you don't do that. I'm Mrs. Appleby's. Nobody messes with the precious formula of Mrs. Appleby's.
Oh, this is what I was going to say. Do you think test audiences are even a good idea? Because what? You're going to let 50 to 75 people decide if this is a good ending or not?
I think test audiences are a good indication of what is and isn't working. I think it's never, ever a good idea to go like, well, they don't like the sad ending, or well, they don't really like this. It should be an indication like, okay, you have a comedy and no one's laughing. Maybe think about that. You have a film in which everyone's emotionally invested in it, and then it just kind of falls off. The exam, I won't get too into it, but like, War of the Roses, for example, had a test screening where the audience hated the ending of that film. And Danny DeVito's like, bite me. I'm the director. I have final cut, so bite me, 20th Century Fox. We're releasing this movie on Christmas. I know the ending is a downer. Too bad. It's my movie. Released in theaters, blockbuster. Most people love the movie because of that ending. Pulp Fiction and Seven both had terrible test screenings because, surprise, surprise, the test audience is like, these movies are disgusting and offensive and gross. And the director's like, I'm Tarantino. I'm David Fincher. We got final cut. Those movies both made well over $100 million. So I think test audiences can be very helpful to let like, give an indication of what the reaction might be like. But sometimes these things are ridiculous because they pull audiences from all sorts of random places. I mean, the one that I went to, were you there for this? We went and saw, I think you were. Didn't we see the Ashley Judd movie, Someone Like You?
Yes.
And this was back when it had a different title. It was called Animal Husbandry.
Yes.
It was Ashley Judd, Hugh Jackman. I think it's like his first movie after X-Men. Greg Kinnear was in it. It's not a bad film. But but at the same time, I remember like filling out the card, the response card at the end, and thinking, I hope they don't change it. Because this movie is fine. Like, don't.
It was fun.
Yeah, and I think a couple months later, it came out, and I thought like it didn't seem like they made any changes at all.
They just changed the title.
Yeah, the title, because no one could remember Animal Husbandry.
No, it's a silly title for a romantic comedy.
Right, and they changed it to Someone Like You, which is a very
generic, but it's fine.
I actually preferred Animal Husbandry, but there you go. They changed it. They changed the title. But no, to your point, I don't like this process. I think it's fine because, I mean, look, it's just a chance to just get a sense of like what a group of people feel and think. You could really read the room. But I don't think it's ever helped a movie to have people go like, I don't like it. It needs to be happy instead of sad. And then they go and redo the ending.
Yeah, like reshoot everything.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's all sorts of movies that have suffered from that process. I mean, it needs to go away. I mean, show the movie to other directors, show it to the filmmaker's family, show it to people who even have a sense of what it is. Because that's the thing too, is sometimes these test audiences, they don't know what they're in for. And of course, if they're like, and you're going to see the new Brad Pitt film, and they show you 7, of course you're going to hate it.
I would freak out if that was me.
But if you're David Fincher's family, for example, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what David's been working on for a few months. Like, he shows it to his siblings, shows it to like people who like have maybe read the script. I think that would be a good audience. Like, okay, like we have a sense of what this is.
Or, if you're going to have a test audience, say, we have a thriller we want to show you.
Right.
Don't tell people it's a Brad Pitt film when all they know is
Legends of the Fall.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was.
Oh, I love Brad Pitt. Morgan Freeman's in this. Oh, we're going to love that.
That's what I was just thinking. Like, if I had just seen Legends of the Fall, which I do have a very strong affection for, and then I went to see 7, nightmares.
You'd be heartbroken.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
Oh, like, I'm never going to like a Brad Pitt movie again. I'm never going to sleep again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I do think it's unfair to force a genre on people when they're not ready for it. Yeah. There's a lot of people that don't want to watch horror movies or thriller movies. Like, don't put them in that audience.
But what a terrible situation, especially with The Temp, where this movie apparently was finished. The movie was finished. And the new studio heads, including the wonderful, I have a lot of respect for Sherry Lansing, but apparently she and her partner said, no, this needs to be a different film because there's a different market for it. And in doing so, the film, again, I like this film. For me, it's a major guilty pleasure, but the film lacks an identity. It doesn't just lack a genre. It's tonally all over the place. It's like 3 different films at once. It's almost like channel changing at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've seen a few movies like that we've talked about. So it's fun to talk about them because they're so insane.
Yeah, I think this is a movie you could learn from because you look at it, and for me, like, the good stuff is there. I love the performances in this movie. I really like Timothy Hutton's performance. I think Faye Dunaway is spectacular in spite of how ridiculous her role is. I think Laura Flynn Boyle, more than any other film she did, I thought this was an indication that she could be like a major film star. And unfortunately, it didn't happen because she was starring in movies like The Temp and not the kind of stuff that, Twin Peaks was an indication of what she was capable of. And I don't feel like there was ever a proper film role for her post Twin Peaks. And yeah, most of the people in this movie they've all done other things, all the better things. And it's almost like they survived this film as opposed to this being one of these movies that they go, oh yeah, I was in The Temp. No, you'll never hear Steven Weber talk about this movie. And Oliver Platt never mentions this film. Oh yeah, the one where I died by a hornet. Yeah.
So how many stars did you give it?
3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, now, I have to write an article about it too, but I think somewhere between 2.5 to 3 stars. I enjoy this film. I always, whenever it's on, when I used to like encounter it on basic cable, even now, I enjoy watching it so much. I dig it. It's well done, but yeah, you can tell that this thing was Edward Scissorhanded in the editing room.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How about you?
Oh, I probably same because I thought it was fun, but you're right. It's not dark enough or funny enough or anything enough. It's just kind of like, oh, there's a few chuckles here and there, and then a few like, whoa, that was intense. But it doesn't really deliver on any level.
It's kind of like, to use the cookie metaphor, it's kind of like when a little kid is left alone and like he goes and makes a cookie for his mom and there's like too many ingredients in there. Mm-hmm. And it's neither chocolate nor raisin nor rum nor anything, but it's all those things. And you have like this monstrous mess. And it's like, well, it's a cookie, so it's fun, but it's still a mess of a cookie that you would never want.
Right. Yes. good metaphor.
All right. Well, that's it for me. I mean, I guess you could say that is how the cookie crumbles.
I knew you were going to say that.
Been waiting. Like, oh, is it time yet? I'm watching the clock. Oh, say it.
All right. That concludes our episode of The Temp.